What is at risk if we can't tell what's real on the internet anymore?
In short, everything. So when you think about it, every single page you go on the internet relies on trust. Like, we don't know what is a human and what is not anymore. But when you start thinking about it, it actually touches everything. And it turns out that more than 70% of people believe that bots are ruining multiplayer gaming. And the really sad part is that almost 20% of them have already stopped playing these games.
Once I go to the orb, it verifies I'm a human, everything's done locally, and it's gone, that personal data, essentially.
Exactly. So all data is deleted from the orb, like your certificate of humanity.
Yes.
It's sent over encrypted from the orb to your phone, just like a signal message, and it gets stored locally only on your personal phone.
This is literally the only way to solve the problem we are facing right now with the internet.
Yes, I really believe so. And I think the most dangerous part is that this is both the only way, but I think that some people will try to solve it in like weird ways that will not work, but they're kind of creepier. We might start thinking about like charging people to prove that they're humans. And like that doesn't work.
Tiago, thank you so much for taking time to chat with me today.
Of course. Thank you for coming over. Super happy to have you.
Well, I mean, first of all, the space we are in is incredible. The view is amazing. The whole office space is so inspiring.
Yeah, you should feel a little bit like walking into the future, right? Which is exactly what the project is about.
Exactly. And, speaking of the project, I remember when I first heard about it, it was through when one part of it, the orb, was going viral on social media. And I thought, what is this? It's so cool.
In cities around the world, big metallic orbs are scanning people's eyeballs and handing out a new cryptocurrency as a reward.
More than 2 million people have volunteered so far for the project, which aims to help confirm if someone is a human or a robot online.
So I started looking into it more and realized, okay, this is just one piece of a bigger picture here with Tools for Humanity, World Network. And I'm really excited to dive into this conversation today for one part of it, or a big part of it being how you are really thinking of solving a lot of problems, especially when it comes to things such as the internet. But before we get there, I'd love to learn more about yourself and your role here as Chief Product Officer.
Yes, for sure. So I work for a company that's called Tools for Humanity, right? And sometimes that trips people a bit up because they're like, it's in the project called World. And so basically the way it goes is Tools for Humanity is a startup that was started about 5 years ago by Sam Altman, the co-founder of OpenAI, which people know most by ChatGPT, and Alex Blania. And the premise was Alex and Sam believed that advanced AI was going to happen really soon. And that was going to be one of the most wonderful things that would ever happen in the world. But there was going to be some changes that would need to be required. And so TFH was started as a company that would build, as the name implies, tools to help humans thrive in the age of AI. And we had a bunch of ideas. And then one of those things that we built was the World Project. And over the past 5 years, that has grown to be much bigger than Tools for Humanity, right? This is now an open portion of the internet that we'll talk a bunch about. Mm-hmm. And so nowadays what we do is we still contribute to World, but there's like 50 other companies around the world in different countries that are also helping build what is the World Project.
50 other companies?
Yeah, something like that, probably more.
That's wild. I actually didn't know that are all contributing to the project itself.
Yeah, different parts of it, right? Either working on hardware about it, helping people onboard with the orb around the world, contributing to the technology, just different bits and pieces. So it's a whole community effort that includes TFH in doing that. And so inside of TFH, I lead our product team. That basically means that anything that's our software, the design, the engineering, like everything that users would use or our developers would use to build apps on top of World, our teams are responsible for that.
No pressure at all.
It's super fun.
Tiago, that makes me really curious then. What would you say is World's mission, if you could sum it up?
So I think World's mission is very similar to that of TFH's, but narrowed down. So World's mission is to accelerate every human in the age of AI, right? And that partially means making sure they have the right tools, but also that they have the right spot as a human on the internet, whatever that may mean, right? And that means knowing that a human has to be treated differently than an AI on the internet. And
I'm excited to dive into that last part you just said. But first, I want to dive into because as you mentioned, it's Tools for Humanity. World is one project under that. If someone has never heard of World or even World ID, part of World, how would you explain it to them in simple terms?
Yeah. So very simply, World is like a real human network. So just like Facebook is a network or Twitter is a network, World is a network of people where the interesting bit is that everyone is a real human. There's a couple of other interesting things about it. For starters, like everyone is anonymous, which we're not used to in networks. And it's an open network, which means that instead of just going to one app and using that network, it's a network that connects to every app that we're on. Right? And so the way this comes across and the different bits and pieces of it, the most famous one is something called World ID, which is almost like your profile on that network. Now, it's an anonymous profile, but it has a blue check mark that says, hey, you're a verified human. And what that lets you do is when you go to a website and you sign in with your World ID, that website can know, you know what, this is a real and unique human, and so I can trust them, right? And that trust is very important because what we'll talk about in a bit is just trust across the internet is breaking down. And so just knowing that very simple fact, is this a real and unique human that I can trust, yes or no, is super important. There's a few other pieces of the World Network. There's something called World App, which is one of the main apps that you can use to interact with the network. There's some really cool things called mini apps, which are like these small little applications that can run inside of World App that developers are building only for humans. And so there's a couple of other pieces, but World ID is the most famous one.
It's funny, you mentioned the mini apps that developers are building. When I was talking to some of your team earlier and they were mentioning this, they said, I think it was 11 million human users. And that really stood out to me because it really hit me. A lot of times, aside from this, we talk about just, a million users or whatnot. And it doesn't have any weight. But when your team member said human users, all of a sudden that changed everything for me. It really put it into perspective. And I had to take a step back because it made me realize how populated, if you will, the internet is with non-human users as well. And so how valuable that number is. And especially going back to your point, being able to verify that it is a human. So being a developer and saying, I have 11 million human users is incredible.
Oh, it's a game changer. We just released this mini app platform less than 6 months ago. And we've seen hundreds of companies around the world build mini apps. Many of them have now raised venture funding at like crazy valuations. And we're just pinching ourselves, right? Because every day more and more users use these mini apps, millions of users every day with millions of times opening them, because you can, for the first time, build certain things that were not possible before without proof of human.
Exactly. Tiago, speaking of that, I want to kind of dive into the internet and how it really is flooded with bots and AI-generated fake content. What is at risk if we can't tell what is real anymore?
In short, everything, right? When you think about the internet, it's all one way or another built on trust. Mm-hmm. And I think like while AI is amazing and it is one of the most wonderful things we will have ever invented, let alone in the most recent years, it does come with new challenges. And one of those challenges is like we don't know what is a human and what is not anymore. And that might sound like a small problem, but when you start thinking about it, it actually touches everything, right? Like very clearly social media, right? You want to know, are these 20 people that are voicing their opinion 20 real people? Or some foreign government with 20 bots, or some dude in a basement with 20 bots that's just like trying to push you this, right? Same thing for gaming, right? Like it's all about competition and fair play. So you want to know, am I actually winning or losing against a real person? Or is someone just sitting with a bunch of bots trying to win all the prizes, right? And when you start looking thing by thing on the internet, it's something as simple as like Taylor Swift concert tickets, right? You want that to go to fans, not to bots. And historically, the way we solved this was with CAPTCHAs, right?
Yes.
And to put it very simply, the way CAPTCHAs work when you like press I'm a human and you have to solve a little puzzle is if the user is smart enough to solve the puzzle, you assume that it's a human. And if the user is kind of dumb and cannot solve the puzzle, it's probably a bot. But now the problem we're having is these bots are now not only as smart as humans, but in many cases even smarter, right, than you and I. They have like PhD level physics and across the board. And so intelligence is no longer the way to tell a human from a bot. And so we need a new way to do that. Otherwise, everything on the internet starts collapsing. And this is where we think proof of human is super important.
And then speaking of that, thinking about everything on the internet starts collapsing, I think we're kind of already, it's funny when I'm on social media a lot because that's part of my job. Yeah. And, up until I would say 2 or 3 months ago, I've never received a comment like this. Now I receive a comment like this on every second video, third video, which is the following. It goes something like, is this AI generated? Are you AI? Are you real? And I've started seeing these comments across different creators, profiles. And I found it really fascinating because at first it took me back. I'm like, what do you mean? Of course I'm real. But then I thought, but even if I tell them, how do they know? And that's just one example with social media. And I know it impacts so many other areas. Outside of social media, what is another area that you see today directly impacting? I mean, it's affecting our entire world, our entire internet, but what's another example you could share?
Yeah. Take gaming, for example, right? We just this week announced a partnership with Razer, which is one of the largest gaming companies in the world, has hundreds of millions of users around the world. What they're hearing from both gamers, but also from developer studios, is that people are they're not gaming anymore as much as they used to because they get really annoyed with the bots. And so we took that and we ran a survey in the US, and it turns out that more than 70% of people believe that bots are ruining multiplayer gaming. And the really sad part is that almost 20% of them have already stopped playing these games because they're just like, this is not fun anymore, right? And the people that are left over, the majority of them, I think it's something like 75% in the US, support having some sort of proof of human so that we can get back to the fair play of it. And this, I think it sounds simple to say that it's just a game. But for people that game, this is part of their lives, right? I grew up like holding some games like very near and dear, and I spent hours and hours on them. And when someone cheats, it feels like you're stealing away something that you really care deeply. And so that's true, like you say, for some people like you on social media, for other people on gaming, for businesses, people are abusing their promotions. For financial services and banks, they're getting defrauded with deepfakes and they don't know how to stop the bleeding. And so it's a huge problem across the board.
100%. So with the announcement you made this week with Razer, I'm not a gamer, but I'm just curious how it would work. So, when they log into their gaming account, can you walk me through that kind of user flow with using World?
Yes, totally. So with Razer specifically, they have something that's called Razer ID.
Okay.
And so the way you can imagine that is just like you use Google sometimes to sign into a bunch of apps. Well, it turns out that Razer ID is something like that for games, where you can use your Razer ID to sign into a bunch of games.
Okay.
And so what Razer is doing is now you'll be able to have a blue check mark on your Razer ID, whether you're a verified human or not. And the thing that's very important is that unlike traditional verification methods, it's completely anonymous. So the game doesn't know anything about you, Razer doesn't know anything about you, World doesn't even know anything about you. All of those entities only know, do you have a blue check mark or not? But that blue check mark is incredibly powerful because now that you're able to have that on your Razer ID, when you go and sign into a game, that game knows this is a real human, or we don't know, right? So be careful. And so what those games will start doing is they'll start running things like tournaments where only verified humans can participate, right? Or they will have prizes where anyone can compete, but the prizes can only go to verified humans. And if someone is caught abusing a system or they're spamming or things like that, you can very easily block them. And since you can only have one World ID, they actually have to respect the timeout of like 30 days instead of having and going and creating 10 other accounts to continue spamming, right? And so you can see how that also affects something like a Discord server, where if someone is being really annoying, you give them a timeout and now they actually have to respect that. And so it really helps solve spam across the board.
It really does. I love that example. Thanks for sharing that. And then that example of other use cases, that it can solve, especially with spam or those timeouts is a game changer. Because so often, especially on Discord, as a Discord user, it is like, you see someone spamming, they get kicked out, and then they make another account. You're like, okay, here we go. And it gets tiring.
Yeah. And they, when you kick them out, they make 10 more just to piss you off, right?
Exactly.
So they multiply.
Exactly. Yeah. One thing you've been mentioning and is extremely important to really talk about is zero knowledge proofs. And I know World ID uses that. For people who are watching who maybe are technical but aren't familiar with it, or maybe they're not technical and not familiar, how would you break down zero knowledge proofs and what it really is?
Yes. So zero knowledge proofs is a new type of cryptography. Just like end-to-end encryption allows us to message someone on Signal in a completely secure and private way, zero knowledge proofs is a very weird type of cryptography. As the name implies, it allows you to prove that something is true without revealing anything about it. Right? And I think the best way to think about it is with an analogy. Now, the analogy won't be perfect, but I think it sort of gives you an intuition. Imagine you go to a club, right? And the bouncer at the front will ask you for your ID. We'll check that you're over 21. And then he says, okay, yes, you're over 21. And he'll put a little stamp on your wrist, right? And then what will happen is, and he'll give you back your ID and he'll forget that, right? When you want to go and get a drink, the barman will ask you like, hey, let me see your wrist, and you'll have the stamp Now, you are proving to that barman that you're over 21 without revealing anything about yourself. That barman doesn't know anything about who you are, what your name was, or anything that the bouncer saw when he did, right? And so World works very similarly, right? You go and you visit a device called the Orb that is able to verify that you're a real and unique person. And it does all of that locally. It's powered by a really high-powered NVIDIA chip so that your data never has to leave and it's all processed on device. It verifies that you're a real human and it gives you that blue check mark and then it forgets everything about you. And so then you can go around the internet and show that blue check mark and prove mathematically that you are, in fact, a real and unique person without saying anything about yourself.
And that's something else I was really curious about. And I know, people watching this would be as well, is you mentioned when I go to the Orb and, get verified, it's all local. After that, my personal data, it's removed essentially.
Exactly. So all data is deleted from the Orb. Your personal, let's call it your certificate of humanity.
Yes.
It's sent over encrypted from the Orb to your phone, just like a signal message. And it gets stored locally only on your personal phone, right? And so you can back that up to Google Drive or iCloud, just like you would back up your pictures or things like that. You can full control over it. So you can delete the app anytime and that gets deleted. What that means is only you and your device know your secrets, right? Only you and your device know which is your World ID, what was your verification like. And through the zero knowledge proofs that we were talking about, you can mathematically make this proof of I have this blue check mark without revealing anything about it.
Looking forward, this is just a side note. This is literally the only way to solve the problem we are facing right now with the internet.
Yes, I really believe so. And I think the most dangerous part is that this is both the only way, but I think that some people will try to solve it in like weird ways that will not work, but they're kind of creepy, right? So you think about, well, we might start thinking about like charging people to prove that they're humans. And like that doesn't work, right? That's just like a way of making more money that doesn't really solve the bot problem. I think we all know that. But then the problem is other companies, what they'll start doing is they'll start asking you to submit like your ID. And so every company will be storing all your personal information, your name, your date of birth, your address. And the problem with that is the real users are going to have to sacrifice their privacy. And the fraudsters, they're simply going to use AI to create fake identities and deep fakes. And so the problem is not going to get solved, and we're just going to ruin privacy for the real users. And so World ID is both the only fundamental way of solving the problem and a way to do it anonymously, which we think is incredibly important to preserve freedom on the internet.
It really is. And I think now more than ever, as users, we value our privacy and our data. So those other examples you've gave, I've seen some companies already starting to do it that way. And in some cases, I've given up my personal data because of that. And it's not a good feeling. It's not something I think about it before I do it. And I'm like, okay, I guess I have to in this case. So.
Yeah, you don't really have a choice, right?
Yeah, that's how it feels. I will though.
You will,
yeah.
with World ID.
Exactly.
Yeah. So this is what we call the pavilion. And so when you visit one of the flagship locations around the world, this is the kind of experience that you would see. And so there's a bunch of orbs so that everyone that wants to verify is able to get in and out quickly.
Yes.
And it's beautiful. This is the new orb designs. We announced them on the fall and we're about to start rolling them out. And so this is the new orb that I was telling you is powered by this latest generation NVIDIA chip that's just able to do the verification all locally.
All locally. So you come up, you book an appointment, you come up, it will verify you, and then your personal data is gone, essentially.
Exactly.
Like that's it.
Just download an app, book an appointment,
Yeah.
you show up, you would show the orb a QR code so that it knows which World ID it's verifying.
Yes.
You stand in front of it for like 5 seconds, it'll go bling, and you're all set. And then all the data gets deleted from there, your certificate gets sent to your device, and you can walk away with your World ID verified on your phone.
Wild. That's so wild. I want to look in one. I haven't looked in one before.
And the cool thing is you don't even have to do that, right? You can just, when you're using
you literally. So what is it when it's seeing you? Is it what makes you human to it to verify that you're a human?
Yeah, so it has a bunch of sensors on its face that check for the same kind of things that you and I would look to make sure that someone is a person, right? And so what are some of those things? Like, well, is it a picture, right? Is it flat, or is there actually like a 3D structure here, right? Yeah. You can also look at things like temperature, right? Like, hey, is this just like some doll that someone's putting in front of me? Or is this like a real person? So it has all of these neural networks that are running locally on device. So ironically, this is not just something for the age of AI, but it's actually enabled uniquely by AI. So you have something like 10 different models that run locally that are checking all of these things just by looking at you within a few seconds. And then it decides, yep, this looks like a human, and so let's go.
I love that it's checking for so countless things. It's not just, like you mentioned, temperature, which I think is really unique. You mentioned, that this person is 3D. It's not a flat surface. There's so many aspects that go into it.
Yeah. And now, having said all of that, I think something that's really important is while it looks like very crazy and sophisticated, and I think like the spherical aspect of it is like very cool, at the end of the day, it's a fancy camera, right? It is a lot of the sensors are similar to what you have on the top of your iPhone, right? The 3D dot projector that helps do the Face ID. And they're just a more powerful version of that, so that it can be fraud resistant. But don't let the enclosure fool you. Like, this is basically like a fancy camera, a secure camera that is able to, with AI, know is this a person or not, and then just send all that stuff to your phone.
Tell me a little bit more about World App and this process. How long does it take to sign up? If someone isn't familiar with it, how would you explain it?
Oh, it's super easy. You just go on the App Store or Google Play, you search for World App or World. It'll be the first thing that comes up. You download it, you can set up your account, and it's actually really fast because you don't need to add any personal data to it, and you can book your appointment right then and there. We usually have orbs near people. We try to have them within 15 minutes of wherever people are. And so hopefully there's one near you. You can book an appointment over the next few days, and you show up to a location like this one. There will be staff there to help you, to guide you through the process if you have any questions about the verification or the app itself. And the verification takes less than 30 seconds. You just stand in front of an orb, it does the checks, and then you're on your way.
You're good to go.
There's a lot of talk right now, of course, about AI agents and where AI is headed very quickly. I'm really curious to get your take on that and how that plays into all of this.
For sure. And I think it's a great question because sometimes people think that we're like that annoying teacher at school that won't let you use the calculator for the exam, right? It's like, no, calculators exist, you should be able to use it. I think like same thing with AI agents. AI is amazing, and AI agents are like super cool, and they're going to change the way the internet works. And so, yes, I should be able to have an AI help me write a tweet, right? But at the end of the day, I am the one signing it. And so one of the things that we think a lot about is how will you able to delegate your World ID to your personal agent, right? And so that means that there's going to be some things on the internet which like don't care if you're a human or a bot, right? Like those apps don't care. There's going to be some apps like gaming where you care that it is a human and it is actually the human, like gaming, right? You don't want the human delegating the game to their agent.
Yes.
Well, there's also a bunch of things in the middle. Let's say like ordering food delivery, right? Or taking out a small loan, something like that, where you want to be able to say, you know what, Jarvis, like go get me a burger.
Yeah.
And that bot needs to be able to go and tell the food delivery company, hey, you should trust me because I'm representing this specific human. So I'm not here to spam you. And so here's $5 for a burger, right? And so you can think about it almost like power of attorney, where just because you have proof of human doesn't mean you won't be able to leverage agents. Yeah. It just means that you're clearly labeling what is what. You're saying, hey, this is a human that is acting on their own behalf, or this is an agent that is representing a human right now.
I like that. That's such a good way of putting it because it does put in perspective of this, I don't know if it's the right word, but harmony almost, where it's, humans working closely with AI, but it's just a seamless experience where you can tell, okay, human, AI is doing something for the human.
Completely, yes.
What are some other things when we think looking ahead to the future and where this is all headed, whether it be specific examples you can share with the World Project or maybe just in general? I don't know if you can share too much with, I know there's a lot of exciting stuff coming up, but anything you can share with us today?
Yeah. So I would say we've talked a lot about how World ID can help protect downside, right? Like what are the problems that we're having and how are we going to solve them?
Yeah.
But I think that perhaps even more importantly is the question of what new things can you build that weren't possible before in a world where you know that there is a verified human, right? And I'll give you a very stupid and simple example. A bunch of companies have tried to grow with like promotions or coupons or things like that. And the problem that they all have is they'll give a user like 50% discount the first time you shop here, but then they'll go around and they'll get the coupon again and again and again and again. And so what that means today for users is like, there's not a lot of coupons around, which kind of sucks. And for the merchants, they don't get to grow the way they would if they were able to run those promotions. And so with something like World ID, you can start introducing like very aggressive incentives. A company can tell you, you know what? We're going to fly you to Mexico for free if you try our airline because we know you're only going to take that flight once. And then after that, like you should just like our airline, right? And so that's a very simple example. But I think there's also going to be a lot of really cool things that we can only start imagining, and we are now seeing that with the mini app developers, of what is now possible because you have this fundamentally new primitive on the internet.
100%. And then the mini app developers, I want to circle back to that because I do have a lot of developers that watch this series. So if there's a developer out there who wants to get started with building one of these mini apps, how do they go about that?
So it's super easy. It takes a few hours to just publish a mini app from beginning to end. These are web-based applications. And so if you have a web app, you can most likely already port that to be a mini app. And we have a very simple SDK that allows you to leverage some of these things that we're talking about, right? And so with a very simple SDK, you can verify that someone is a real human, or you can send them push notifications, or you can even accept payments. And so it's super easy to do. You press submit, and then that gets shipped to all users across the world. There's no, you have to build it for this kind of phone and that kind of phone. We take care of all of that for you. And it's all based on web technologies.
Wow. Very easy.
Yes.
What do you think we need to do to get to where you're talking about, where everyone in the world is a verified human?
See, one of the hardest things about the project is that, like any network, it's only as useful as its scale. Right? So when you think about something like WhatsApp or Facebook, you could have the exact same app that you have today, but if only 2 of your friends instead of 200 are on it, it's like kind of pointless, right? And so for the early years of the project, we focused a lot on scaling, and we went, as you said, from 0 to 11 million verified humans and 25 million total on the network, and it's rapidly growing. So the really exciting thing is that we are now on this cusp of hitting that escape velocity where you have what we would call like a utility explosion of like you now start having enough users on the network where you can actually start delivering on the promises. Yes. And when you look around the world, places like Lisbon, I believe that about 1 in 5 people have visited an orb. Santiago de Chile is something like 1 in 7. Argentina and Buenos Aires is something like 1 in 3. And so you start having like these really dense pockets of people that are verified. And so that makes it possible for developers to actually rely on World ID.
It's so true. It's one of those things where even going back to gaming, if I was a gamer, and a lot of times you have other friends who are gamers too. And if they were like, hey, are you verified? And I'm not, I'm like, oh, I need to get verified ASAP. So it's a trickle effect almost.
Exactly. And I think what we'll see on apps is we talk about like boosts and gates, right? Like the way games will start is I think very few games will say you can only play if you're a human. But what they will say is, you know what? If you're a human, you're going to get this sword that's only for you. And that sword, maybe it's a little bit overpowered. Right? And so what that will start happening is you'll be able to play the game without it, right? But more and more people will start verifying because they want the sword, and you're at a disadvantage if you do not have that sword. And then over time, within that game, most users will be verified, and then that game developer will be able to say, you know what? Now we will have this feature or this server that is exclusively for humans. And you can think about it the same way across the internet, right? I think that for social media, you'll get the blue check mark, and what will happen initially is your views and things like that will probably get boosted if you are a verified human until eventually enough people are verified that you can actually start using it as a gate.
Exactly. And it goes back to other incentives. Like you mentioned, the coupon example, I think is such a good one because it's a small example, like you said, but it's a really big example, especially when you think with what companies can do with it. Okay, we know you're only going to take this flight once. Mm-hmm. So it's verified, different things like that. They can really their marketing teams can get very creative.
Yes, for sure. But for me personally, the one I'm most excited for is to get rid of scalpers for concert tickets. I love going to concerts, and it's just so annoying having to rebuy them on resales at like 5 times the price just because some bot beat me to it. So that is the one that I'm personally most excited for.
I know. And it's funny you bring that up because I've seen so much of that happening with the Taylor Swift concert. There was just on the news, there was constant stories of people who got scammed or different scenarios going on with bots.
Yes, and artists would probably agree, right? Artists want the tickets to go to the fans. Forget paying 5 times the prices, right? Like you say, getting scammed by buying some fake tickets on resale.
Okay. Tiago, I'm really curious to hear, what is at risk if we can't tell what's real on the internet anymore?
In short, everything. So when you think about it, every single page you go on the internet relies on trust, relies on either you or the application knowing that they can trust the user that's interacting. And so whether it's something like social media, right, that's breaking down because of bots, gaming, where people are not playing as much as they used to anymore because it's just not fun. Something as simple as concert tickets, just across the board, financial services that are getting defrauded with deepfakes. every single thing on the internet is completely breaking down right now.
Tiago, thank you so much for taking time to chat through this with me. I'm leaving feeling very inspired and something I haven't been able to say in a long time, hopeful about where the internet is headed. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Super excited to get this to the whole world.